Venom, go get him. Knock, knock, let the devil in. Welcome back to StillerBros at the Movies, where today, after a long time since we promised it, Venom. We are seeing Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Now, this is a movie we did not intend to see 3 years ago when it was announced that they were happening. So, the first Venom movie is kind of fun. It's complicated.
It's watchable and it's a fun time, pretty much. But we didn't see it in theaters.
We didn't particularly think it was great or good or that good. And when we finally did catch it on cable later on, but
we've watched it a couple times. I think I like it a little more than you do.
It's fine. I don't absolutely hate it. It's just that if it's on, I'll probably try to watch something else before I watch it.
Yeah.
Watch it. But Venom is a very intriguing character, I guess would be the word. Essentially, he was created as the Spider-Man villain, villain with the idea that he was going to be Spider-Man's dark duplicate, created from a black suit that Spider-Man had for a short amount of time. And then eventually he fused onto Eddie Brock, who is basically in many ways the anti-Spider-Man, the anti-Peter Parker. This charismatic, muscular guy a muscular, angry guy instead of the mild-mannered, skinny dweeb.
Yeah. So in 2018, they put out the first Venom movie starring Tom Hardy, which was basically they ripped Spider-Man out of the origin story and made an entire Venom origin story without Spider-Man, because they had just basically rebooted the character and they weren't 100% on board with putting Tom Holland in, just in case the movie flopped.
Now, this was not the first time that we saw Venom on the big screen. We saw back in
2007.
Back in 2007, he was in Spider-Man 3, a full 14 years. I remember seeing that in theaters.
Yes, we're old, we get it, who cares?
Chill, bossy boots, we'll get to it. Anyway.
Only we get that.
Maybe only we get that, maybe you get that. Either way, Venom first appeared in Spider-Man 3, on the big screen in Spider-Man 3. Nobody really liked him.
Especially
Topher
Grace and Sam Raimi.
There was a lot. It felt like a lot of people complained that Venom kind of felt shoehorned into Spider-Man 3 when he appeared,
which is what Sam Raimi would later admit to.
But so when it was announced that they were working on a Venom movie way back in like 2010, everyone was like, "What? Why? No, why?" So it went through a lot of iterations, obviously. Until
a lot of different directors came in and out. At one point, Josh Trank was approached to direct it. At another point, there were other people considered, obviously.
But eventually, the version we got was given to one Tom Hardy, the actor behind such work as Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, that one guy in Inception, that other guy in Dunkirk.
Those two guys in
Legends.
But and Mad Max, of course.
Yeah.
But Tom Hardy was so behind this the second he signed on. He has an executive producer credit on the first Venom. He was so into playing Venom. He clearly has a huge affinity for this character. So it felt like a pretty good jump-in point.
Basically, the whole movie feels like they just kind of pulled Tom Hardy's string and let him go, because there's whole points of the movie where he just kind of runs around and does all kinds of weird stuff. He's jumping in lobster tanks. He's threatening to eat the nice lady who runs the bodega down the street. He's like sweaty and dirty and all that other kind of stuff.
And then Venom was not well received by critics.
But despite the fact that most critics and some audience didn't particularly like it, it became a financial success.
And now, so obviously a sequel needed to be happening. And fortunately, in the mid-credit scene of that movie, we got a tease for what this movie would be about. and we saw Woody Harrelson would be playing Carnage.
So Carnage is Venom's spawn, basically, is the backstory for him. Venom, the Venom symbiote of which it was created, reproduced, split off into two, and one piece jumped onto Eddie's cellmate, who is a serial killer named Cletus Cassidy. Of course, the version of Carnage we were first introduced to was not much of a serial killer because it was the 1990s Spider-Man television show.
We just kind of had to. We could just kind of have him be a generic crazy guy with a eye, and the most serial killery thing he does is have a bomb strapped to his chest at one point.
Also, he eats a lot of people's life energy throughout part two of the two-parter episode.
Yes, but we are fully aware. We are not fully aware of Venom and Carnage really outside of the '90s cartoon.
We do know that that later on in Venom's lifespan cycle, when he became an anti-hero, Carnage became basically like his super arch nemesis kind of thing.
Yeah. So obviously bringing Carnage in was probably the best call.
And the interesting thing about Carnage is that we kind of thought that he was going to be one of the villains in Spider-Man 4 when that was kind of a thing that was happening.
But that was just us thinking about that.
That was us thinking. There was never an announcement that Carnage was coming back. It's just that there was a piece of the symbiote in Spider-Man 3 that was left over that nobody ever kind of addressed. And so we thought that Carnage was going to come, that Carnage could probably come in a future Spider-Man movie. And we kind of thought Jim Carrey would be a perfect casting, mostly because he looked exactly like the guy in the 90s cartoon.
Yeah, but now we have Cletus Cassidy played by Woody Harrelson, who in the first movie was just doing it as a favor to the director Ruben Fleischer, with the understanding that Ruben would probably direct the sequel. That did not end up happening.
So Ruben Fleischer, I guess, got busy, so they replaced him. But the question was, who would they replace him with? And then eventually they revealed who they replaced him with, and it's kind of an interesting choice.
Andy Serkis. Some people know that name, others not so much. But basically, some people would probably know him as Gollum from the Lord of the Rings movies.
Andy Serkis started his career as an actor. He's played a lot of roles, such as Ulysses Claw in the MCU, and he's going to be Alfred in the next Batman movie.
And of course, one of his better roles is Caesar in the recent Planet of the Apes movies.
So but recently he has jumped into directing.
And he started as a second unit director on the Hobbit trilogy, and then he did two other movies before this.
But now this is his first big superhero blockbuster movie. Andy Serkis is directing a big blockbuster movie. He's showing that, hey, a studio had enough faith in him to give him a tent pole. So now he's an in-demand director. So now he's got a bunch of projects on. So now, at least the last time we heard anything from him in regards to what he's working on next, he's got a lot of projects lined up.
Yes, but mostly it's going to be interesting to see the differences between this movie and the first movie, mostly because now they kind of understand what audiences want out of a Venom movie.
The first movie was clearly a comedy director trying a little too hard to be dark, broody, serious.
And there was a lot of great comic elements to it. I did enjoy a couple of the jokes in the first movie.
But this time Andy Serkis has not directed a comedy before. He's a funny guy, as shown by by the way they played Ulysses Claw in Black Panther, but he's never directed a comedy movie before.
He's had the two movies he's directed are a period drama starring Andrew Garfield,
and the lesser known live action adaptation of the Jungle Book that came out over the last 10 years.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes together. It's going to be interesting to see how this movie comes together, because Tom Hardy has a story by credit on this.
With a written by credit by Kelly Marcel, who despite the big black mark of 50 Shades of Grey on her filmography, has gained a lot of goodwill from me for Saving Mr. Banks, and a movie that I still contend is an underrated gem in Disney's catalog.
Yeah.
So, but in the end, I think we have to ask the question: is Venom 2 going to be better than Venom 1, or is Andy Serkis just going to be like, no, Gollum didn't direct the movie, Smeagol directed the filmsies?
Any excuse to do the Gollum voice, he is all over that.
So, anyway, guys, we will see you guys. We're just going to head into the movie. Hopefully we enjoy it. Hopefully we get more out of it than we got out of the first one. So we will see, but we will figure out how we feel after the jump.
All right, guys, we're out.
Do not let anyone spoil that mid-credit scene.
No, do not do that. See this movie yourself. Seriously, it's a fun time, and the credit scene alone is worth the price of admission.
So, the first Venom was not great, but this one I think fills in a lot of the gaps.
I think part of it is just because they don't have to have an origin story, so we can just get right into the relationship between Eddie and Venom.
Though I will say it does have a couple of similar issues to the first one, but let's get into it. Tom Hardy gives it his all with this character, so much so that he doesn't care, that he just kind of has a don't care attitude. It's like, if I just want to scream at myself for 10 minutes in this scene, then I'm gonna do it.
And a lot of it is, and there's a lot of incredibly cool work involved with it, including one particular scene in the apartment between him and Venom, where there was a lot of clearly Tom getting pulled around on wires.
And of course the fun thing is that Tom Hardy does play Venom and Eddie Brock, so he has the dynamic there. In fact, for a good chunk of the movie, you kind of question: is he switching to the Venom voice on purpose, or is he just so deep into his American accent that he's doing for Eddie Brock that he's kind of getting them mixed up in his head? Great. I'm going to say right now, it's clearly it is intentional. He is fading into the Venom voice specifically so that people can to show that that him and the symbiote are becoming more of a single unit.
Yeah, Woody Harrelson is he's pretty good in this.
He's nuts in this. The fact that this is just him getting a chance to play. I'm not saying that Woody Harrelson doesn't get a chance to play it often, but here he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna be fun. I'm gonna have a little fun. I'm gonna play crazy.
He's just teetering on the edge of a scene of hamming it up and chewing on the scenery, but he's having a good time.
But he knows that there's no room for that. But he knows that there's no room for scenery when Tom's just basically eating it all himself.
Yeah, he's not in.
Tom's not leaving anything for anyone else.
He's not chewing scenery. But he's having a damn good time with this.
Now one of the bigger issues is that Michelle Williams is back, but it feels like the movie doesn't quite know what to do with her, bringing her back.
She didn't really have much to do in the first movie, and she has pretty much even less to do in this one.
In this particular case, she's kind of here because she's kind of here as kind of a middleman between Venom and Eddie in one scene, and then she's kind of there for a few comical scenes of let's get you here. We kind of need to get you from A to B here. She has a purpose in the movie. It's just that the movie just kind of it's just that when she's not on screen, the movie just kind of leaves her on the sidelines.
Yeah, Andy Serkis did really freaking well with the visuals on this.
Especially the final action scene. Especially the build up to the final action scene is just one of those things where it's like, wow, you paid those production designers for some pretty artsy religious looks.
There was especially the way that they do Carnage, where it's coming out of him.
Venom. Well, the thing is, Venom. The way that they animate Venom going on to Eddie is that it's basically like coming out of a certain place and then turning into a suit around him. Carnage comes out of Cassidy and he turns into it.
Yeah. So there's just so much going on with it that it's so, and there's so many cool little details and stuff that is so kind of awesome to look at.
Like there's little bits of black in Carnage has little bits of black in his face. So he's not just all red. He's got a head. He actually looks a bit like the Venom symbiote coming out of him.
It's actually almost exactly how I pictured a live action version of Carnage would be for pretty much the longest time.
And now that when it's time for the symbiote fights to go down, and it's brutal, it's heavy. In fact, this feels like the kind of like the first one. This feels like they shot an R-rated movie and then they had to cut around certain things.
Like we're cutting away. Like there's this like certain things that happen and then we cut away before.
We cut away just before the bloodletting starts.
When we cut away just before the bloodletting starts, or just before something happens to them, something that would probably make the MPAA get all up in arms about it. That was kind of a thing with the first one. It's kind of a thing with this one. Not necessarily to say that cutting a an R.
You don't cutting an R to a PG-13 or even a PG. It happens.
It happens. It's not necessarily the word. It doesn't necessarily make the movie. It doesn't necessarily mark a quality of a movie. It just makes the movie feel a little more neutered than it probably was intended to be.
So it's kind of a mark. So it's kind of a mark on the movie that it feels like they shot an R-rated movie, and then let's cut it down to PG-13 so we can get some more people to watch like the first one.
Yeah.
Also, one of the things I thought of with the first one was the way that the relationship between Eddie and Venom was kind of pushed narratively a little too quickly, a little too out of nowhere, and I think they fixed that issue a little bit here, but in another way they were kind of focusing on the fact that they had to get back together, more than the wise eyes. Like, I love the fact that Venom and Eddie are playing like an old married couple at this point in their relationship. Like, they even have Venom singing "Let's Call the Whole Thing Off" just to basically hack for everybody. Venom and Eddie do not see eye to eye, but they do still kinda love each other.
There's an interesting character dynamic between the two. And Tom Hardy has great chemistry with Tom Hardy, in the same way that, but obviously he's played him opposite himself before. It's an actor who he clearly has great respect for.
Yeah.
In the same way Paul Bettany has a great respect for Paul Bettany in WandaVision.
But the more this movie goes on, the more it's a focus on Venom and Eddie, and which is kind of why, despite the fact that the movie's called Let There Be Carnage, by the time we get to the final fight with Carnage, he's still kind of a standard serial killer who just happens to have a alien symbiote attached to him. It doesn't take away from the fight. It's just essentially, it's kind of weird that a movie called Let There Be Carnage does not have a bit more focus on Carnage.
It's interesting because the movie seems to focus a lot more on Eddie and Venom's relationship than it does about Carnage at all.
Now, it's fine because, like we've been saying, Woody Harrelson's hamming it up. We get at least glimpses of Cassidy's personalities, relationships. In fact, Cassidy actually gets a bit of a backstory moment in what I assume was a big moment in an animated sequence that I assume was kind of a big deal for Andy Serkis, because he was just kind of like, no, I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to make it a little bit of a directorial mark on it. In fact, I'm even going to make it look cool. I'm even going to do this cool thing where Cassidy and Brock aren't in the same room, but they're clearly having a conversation of some kind by the way that I'm shooting it.
There's a lot of creative flourishes and stuff like that that are throughout the movie, and it's kind of fun and it kind of makes this an enjoyable thing to watch. Is it the best superhero movie that we've gotten No. Is it the worst? Hell no.
Not While Fans 4 Stick is still is still publicly available.
And it will be publicly available forever because it's on Disney Plus.
But anything else to add?
All I can say is that mid-credits scene got me pumped for so much, and I can't wait to see where that goes.
Yep. So, anyway, guys, I think that's it for right now. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to tune in next time when we continue our Halloween spooktacular by going down to the Winchester, having ourselves a pint, and waiting till this all blows over. Bye.
Bye.